Will the government grant us permission to go to the grocery store and buy what we want today? No, you have bought too much of that. Your carbon footprint has exceeded its limits.
Your social credit score does not allow for the purchase that you are intending.
That's it. And then you're going to have the house surrounded by dangling ropes as all the, mind control operatives come in, our AI operatives, to thwart us down because we've said things that we shouldn't have said. Yes.
Well, the Supreme Court just issued a couple of rulings today that are in favor of.
They did. I saw that.
The folks out there, and I think at the end of the day, it's the peeps that the owners need to be afraid of. I think that what we saw last night was an epic, catastrophic, frustrating, and embarrassing performance.
Yeah, I guess.
At a minimum, if Putin and all of the other oligarchs and the folks that we are supposed to be afraid of, if they're not sitting back laughing their ass off, I don't know what they could be thinking, because that was just a complete embarrassing, self-imposed capitulation of not having a fucking clue and doing it blatantly in front of everybody.
Oh yeah. Well, and then he's defiant. He's not going to step down. The more I look at this, I don't think he's going to step down. And I think we're in big trouble here. Trump's going to win. The thing I worry about Trump is not only have they pummeled him with legal, case after case after case, which he's done a pretty effective job so far at stopping some of it, but he's going to get sentenced. Everyone, has to remember, in the middle of July here, Trump is going to get sentenced. You got a judge who's got a conviction of 34 felony counts. If everyone thinks Trump is just going to walk scot-free, they're going to try and jail him. And I think he's going to get it stayed, but I think he's probably going to end up going to jail. I really do. I think in some level of incarceration is going to happen here. And that's going to cause a lot of upset in this country and even more outrage. He'll get it stayed, and I think he's going to win on appeal. But they're going to humiliate him as much as they can. They want to put him on remember in England, they used to, Quasimodo, when they did, what was it? The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You put them on the pillar and you humiliate them. Where everybody throws that. That's what they are doing to Trump right now, metaphorically. And Trump has some really dangerous stuff coming up. He has a Uranus square Mars 3 times. In fact, they read that verdict. My mouth dropped at how accurate the astrology was in this. When they read the verdict for Trump's guilty verdict in that last trial, Uranus had just crossed his midheaven. And I mean, literally, almost to the day, Uranus crossed Donald Trump's midheaven. And I went, wow, talk about disruption. Even though he's taking it in stride, he's not getting upset. But that Uranus hit his midheaven. And guess what? It's going to hit it 2 more times. It's a 3-hit total.
Before the election, or?
Well, it's going to be 1 here. You know what? Let me look at that, because that's a very good question. Let's fire up Donald Trump's chart. You may have to do a little edit here.
Yeah, but, that's what we're all about, is edit.
Fire it up. Yeah, Donald Trump. Here, let's get him and sliding up both. I call him sliding, not Biden.
I call him Sloppy Joe.
Oh God, I'm telling you, we're talking.
And that's.
I've never seen anything in my life like this ever.
Well, it's interesting to watch all of the pundits, and particularly the folks on the left. Van Jones last night he was as close to tears without shedding them as one can get when.
Okay, now let me go back to resume. So here, we can go back online here. So what we've got here is Donald Trump. Look at June 1st, he had that verdict read. Look at right here. You can actually see where I'm circling. let me get a annotation pen here. So just for anybody who's not familiar, this looks like a complex graphic. It's actually not. This is all the months through 2024, and you can see 25 here. So what's good is this is a tool that allows astrologers to see. It's called the graphic ephemeris. When a planet is direct, it's going down. This is why it looks like a sine wave. And then when a planet stations, it goes back up. Well, what's useful is this is Donald Trump's chart in reference to the transits in the sky. So you can see Uranus crossed his midheaven. You can see that's the what we call MCIC axis, which is just where the sun is at noon and the sun is at midnight. Yeah, now I can hear you. Let's recut that again. This is going to be a colossal editing job. So planets get like Popeye on spinach when they cross the angles. Well, the midheaven is where the sun is at noon in everyone's birth chart. And it also rules career, public standing, and direction. Donald Trump had Uranus cross his midheaven the day they read the 34 count verdict. Now, it's going to come forward, Uranus will progress and square Donald Trump's Mars between the end of July all the way into the beginning of October. You can see this right here. What does this mean? Danger. Danger. This could be assassination attempts. This could be a plane crash. This could be somebody slipping something. You know, if they get to, and I don't care who makes the laws. Well, here we go. You know, you're dealing with the owners here. You're not dealing with the politicians in Washington. And this is a very dangerous time for Donald Trump between the end of July and the beginning of October. Expect anything. Roller coaster ride. And if they don't kill him, they're certainly going to try and impale him with anything they can to make it impeding him from winning the election. And then Uranus is going to cross his midheaven again. You can see right here, it's going to be right in about December. So that will be the second hit. And then you've got the final hurrah going over his midheaven right here, which is next March of 2025. So plain English, I mean, Donald Trump has a roller coaster ride. He's stable. He's definitely he's very see in the debate. He was words, you know, I mean, and his voice, you know, he sounded like he was out of gas. It was like a bad Clint Eastwood movie. So the problem was, you know, we're definitely gonna get a roller coaster ride here. And here's what's even more important. This is Donald Trump's chart. The biggest thing is the good old USA itself. And this is the thing you and I were talking about before in a sidereal zodiac. And I put this out in my newsletter. And that is in the sky, every 84 years, the planet Uranus will traverse the sidereal sign of Taurus. Now you might say, okay, great, so what? Well, let's go back 84 years in history, and I mentioned this in my newsletter. The last time that Uranus traversed the beginnings of Taurus, Hitler was busy taking over France, and the Battle of Dunkirk, all this stuff was going on in Europe. And we had massive trouble. The world was, and of course, which was financed by the U.S. Treasury Department, as well as Hitler, actually launched their attack on the, Pearl Harbor. Of course, that, the Congress dropped the gavel in 2 seconds, and we were in war. Even though our Democratic president at the time was pounding his fist saying, oh, your sons and daughters will never go to war. Roosevelt, remember that? Right. And that's exactly what happened. Our sons and daughters went to war. And of course, these people operate off of atrocities. They love it when violence happens or some atrocious thing happens, like an attack. And I think we are quite possibly in the wind for something major to happen. And here's why. You can see on this chart, this is right here, Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals, right? And you can see Uranus has entered into the sidereal sign of Taurus, and that actually did that right on June 1st. Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, it's Zoom. I mean, Zoom is just knocking us completely out. And I never get this. This is so strange. I don't know what the hell's going on. It must be the subject matter. They're knocking us out. Anyways, um, so June 1st, you're gonna have to edit all this.
Yeah.
So June 1st, um, Uranus entered into the sidereal sign. So tropical astrologers are not going to see this the same way because there's about a 24-degree difference between tropical here.
Well, let's try one thing that I wanted to bring up and pose an interrogation to the chart. And that's because it's about 3 weeks away, about 2.5. And that is July 15th, which oddly enough happens to be my birthday.
Ah,
But Cliff High, in his
oh
predictive
yeah.
linguistics and webbots, is predicting
Mhm.
something. And
Well, so are a lot of other psychics. Yeah.
the remote viewers did a
Right.
session, did a blind session on it, and they're seeing some type of potential kinetic event. Now, Cliff put out a follow up after the remote viewers had done their work,
Right.
and says that the language is lining up to be something of a UFO type event,
Right. Extraterrestrial. I heard that last night. Yep.
right?
Yep.
What's the charts say about the 15th of July?
Well, the charts overall, I mean, I would say violence and upheaval is more the case. I wouldn't be surprised at some type of cyber attack that is blamed on something. I would again, this is a Mars Uranus conjunction. See, and I was explaining this before. When you look at the astrology, every time Uranus enters the sidereal sign of Taurus, we end up with war starting or some tumultuous situation. Now, if you go back 84 years, and I should tell you that Uranus stays in the sidereal constellation, which is the Pleiades, by the way, and it's also where the seven sisters of Hades are. Those are the seven stars. And this ties into the whole Greek mythology with Atlas holding up the world, right? He was the father of the seven daughters who were sentenced and then transposed into stars.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of ancient lore that supports that this is a very dangerous area, in terms of a place in the sky. And one of the most evil stars in the sky, which is also known as the head of Satan, also known as Caput Algol. Anybody can look this up. It is a very dangerous star. Uranus and Mars are going to cross over that. Mars will hit a little bit sooner, but this is actually a window somewhere between the 10th of July all the way into the 20th is a very dangerous window. And this is exactly what the remote viewers and Cliff High is seeing on his random generators. My call on this would be something violent, some type of an attack. The reason why is Mars and Uranus is of the nature of abrupt, out of the blue attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And this would very much parallel what I'm seeing in Donald Trump's chart and what I'm seeing for this country, because at the same time, we have the confluence of the United States, Pluto returns second hit. See, as I demonstrated earlier, planets will retrograde. They'll make an aspect, they'll retrograde, they'll come back and make another aspect, and then they'll retrograde again and go direct and make another aspect. Well, this is exactly what's happening on the United States birth chart. Is Pluto is literally returning to Pluto, which can only happen every 245 to 250 years. And many statisticians and various different people will say that empires tend to rise and fall every 200 years. Well, the United States is 248 years this July 4th. No question about it. And we are right in the sidereal Pluto return. So this is literally going to happen in the middle of July. It's right on the 16th of July, give or take a day or so. Well, you got to relate to what I'm saying here. So we have the confluence of sidereal Uranus, or Uranus moving into the sidereal sign of Taurus, which always creates trouble. And every 84 years, if you go back through history, you'll see that. The 84 years before, the 7-year period was World War II, which all really kicked in 1940. Ended, of course, 1947 is the 7 years later. But that 7-year window, the world was at war and in turmoil. Now, let's go back 7 years prior to, or, I'm sorry, not 7, but 84 years prior to that. And what do we got? The Civil War. You see, I mean, if you look at the Civil War period from like 1860 forward, it was insanity. And I actually have this in my newsletter, but that 7-year period was the bracketing of the commencement of the Civil War and all the chaos that was ensuing before it and the aftermath. Now, let's go back 84 years prior to that. You got the Revolutionary War of this country, which that 7-year period all was right when the Revolutionary Army was forming and Washington was doing the fighting. And of course, this country was formed. Let's go back 84 years prior to that. This is when Europe was in turmoil with many of the monarchies being destroyed and the parliamentary powers coming into play. So, and we could go back farther, and I have, and it's pretty amazing. The world was a different place then. But ever since the 1700s forward, we've had the Industrial Revolution. And these have become much more intense and tumultuous. Well, this is what we've got happening right now, folks. And I mean, Uranus for the next 7 years will be in sidereal Taurus. Every time this happens that I can see, it has been hell coming to breakfast. And this is where we're at. The confluence, though, of Uranus being conjuncted by Mars. Mars and Uranus is like flipping matches over an open can of gasoline. It's volatile, it's intense, it's abrupt, it's out of the blue. And this is the kind of stuff I would expect. I would expect cyber attacks, EMP pulses. I would expect riots or some event that the mind control news releases and boom, we're in chaos. Also, you could see more war. One of the interrogations I cast on this just a little while ago, which is what you wanted me to do. I did this right before you and I got going here today. And I think we're going to see more escalation with this whole situation to the Iranian regime. I mean, the $6 billion for the prisoner swap was clearly a check to go fund your terrorist organizations. And this is exactly what's happened. I mean, you look back. I mean, this is very transparent. Biden is not running this country. The owners are.
Do you think that, you've mentioned that during these 84-year cycles, there's a 7-year period which seems to ensue and be a part of each one of those 84-year cycles.
That's when the wars break out.
How do you think that correlates to some of the religious prophecies about the 7-year tribulation?
The law of 7 is absolutely divine and magical. You got 7 holes in your head. You got 7 days of the week. You got 7 holes of heaven and hell. 7 times 7 is 49. That's the 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions. Many quantum physicists are running around talking about the 11 dimensions, but I think it's 49 and 49, 28 and a half years to go around the chart, right? Around the solar system. Well, let's do the math. Divide that by 4. That's 7. Here's the other interesting thing. The moon takes 28 and a half days to catch back up to where it was. Do the math on that. It's about 28 days approximately. So we end up with 7 being very, very powerful. And every 7 years, that's where the 7-year itch comes from. I put out a little video on my YouTube about that. And the 7-year itch on 3s and 7s will always hit Mars and Saturn. Saturn is God's way of destroying what was created so that it could be rejuvenated back into reinitiation, or you could say seeding. And it never stops. That's why no matter what happens, this world will never end, because creation is the overall riding force. The demonics are the destructive force. And this is what we see in these ebbs and flows, is the disruption and chaos will bring a new order. And this is exactly what's happened every time.
One of the interesting correlations on timing, and again, thinking of all the different memes that are out there, all the different numerology, things that people are putting down as temporal markers. 7 years from now is 2030.
7 years from now is 2030. That's right.
And there's the whole Agenda 2030. It's funny watching those on the left get all worked up about Project 2025.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, the abject lack of critical thinking and reasoning is quite profound to me.
Oh,
It's
it's mind
hard.
control. Mind
Yeah,
control.
it has to be because there's no
It
way that
is.
you can have any sense of any modicum of common sense and not see what's going on here and still be in denial.
You know,
Um,
the other day I was going down San Vicente Boulevard, and that's where George Carlin had his old office, right? And they're tearing it down right now. It's right next to the soup plantation. And I looked up and I went, "Oh my God, George, George, we miss you." You know, I mean, he couldn't have nailed it more succinctly and accurately when he said, "Forget the politicians, you have owners. They own this place." And we can thank Woodrow Wilson because he's the guy that rubber stamped the uh, the 1913 Federal
mm,
Bankers in Power. I care not who makes the laws. And boy, that couldn't be more accurate. And we are seeing this consistently over the last 100 and something years. I mean, 1913, if you do the math, it's 111 years ago. And it's
mhm.
exactly where we're at. And I could tell you, look what they did. I mean, there's evidence. David Webb, in his book, The Great Taking, was a genius when he pointed out the chain of events, the domino effect that happened with the New York banks allowing the Great Depression to happen. He said that was totally preventable. And David Webb, very interesting. His book is free. I encourage people to go read it. And he knew George Soros and still does. And Soros, you know, everyone thinks Soros is the big bad guy. Actually, Soros is a minion. And Soros himself had told David Webb, he said, "You have no idea how powerful these guys are at the top of the pyramid." Now, you think about that. They own this place. You know, everybody says BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Yeah, they're definitely major players, but they're tentacles to the head of the snake, and they really are. And we have a place that is very demonic. And will poison your water and will poison your food. And I think that's exactly what they've been doing. And, you know, I always love to show that tree that shows the four worlds, the four major worlds. And I love that diagram. I can put it up, but I don't know if the computer's going to vapor lock here. It'll go Biden on me. Let me see if it works. Because it's always going Biden. Let me see. I think let me get rid of that program and see if we reduce a few graphics. It seems to be that solar fire that locks up. Yeah, this is one of my favorite diagrams to demonstrate, you know, and again, whatever your religious beliefs are, we all have some belief in God or the higher power above. And you can see here, God is at the very top, whatever you want to refer God to be. But then there's these words called Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or. This is the solidification of divinity so creation can even happen. And then, so anyways, you know, that's when the worlds begin. So the worlds of absolute is where they say souls are created. This is far above any astrology or any planetary stuff or amino acids and rotating galaxies. So they claim this isn't even the molecular world up here. It's way past anything humans are going to comprehend, or at least I can't even belch my checkbook. So I know it's past my comprehension. So this is really divine stuff. The next world's down, Brias, where the waters of creation get much more dense, and there is many spiritual worlds. Again, not like what astrologers talk about and quantum physicists and all that other stuff. It's way down here, the worlds of Yetzirah. Yetzirah is a strange word that just simply means formation. The categorizing in science. This is where the six-dimensional space comes into play. And they say at the bottom of this is where you could say our dimension is. And again, they claim there's 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions in each one. And if that's true, which I believe it is, that's profound. I mean, it's way beyond comprehension. And you can see over here the third hierarchy. Now we start seeing in here the wings of the wind. These are mentioned in many sacred texts, particularly the Psalms. The wings, you've heard that term where God rides the wings of the winds into creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the 72 angels of Exodus, which is so much the seat of much magic, and John Dee's Enochian magic, and of course Solomon's Keys of Solomon, which is very dangerous stuff, by the way. But this is what many secret societies are aware of. And then, of course, we have our archangels, angels, intelligences, and spirits. Well, then if we keep going, the Yetziratic worlds then boil down into what we call the worlds of Asaya. Asaya is just a fancy word that means the astral planes. Principle, at least for my mind, I can tell you that. So the bottom line is, then we have Earth. So what do we have here? I mean, if you just back this out and look at it, we have a reality machine called time, and space is created on Earth. And they claim there's like 300 planets like Earth. And some are lower in evolution, some are higher. But what's fascinating about this whole diagram is what we've got here is a divine creational machine that takes spirit and concretizes it into matter. And you think about that, whether you're a human, whether you're an animal, whether you're a plant, or in the mineral kingdoms, these are all ways of bringing spirit down into matter. And that's what the earth truly is. And notice if we get underneath that, now we get into the demonic hierarchies. And every culture of this planet has always had stories about the wars in heaven, whether it's the Garden of Eden story or the story that we see in the Bhagavad Gita. The Egyptians had it, the Chaldeans had it. They all had some creational story of where God got in a war with the angels or deities or beings. And they were cast down. Of course, in the West, the devil, right? Am I cutting out again?
Yeah, but you're back
God.
now.
Okay, good. Yeah. So in the West, we have the story of the devil, right? Usually we get a guy with a suit tie and a microphone telling us about the devil, but it's just a little bit deeper than that. This is the fourth hierarchy, which is not just the devil. It's Lucifer, Satan, Belial, and Leviathan. And beneath that, you've got 8 sub-princes. And many of us souls will matriculate down into what we call life. And then when we exit the body, known as death, we will recycle. Some souls will go down in the lower tree of life, which is the demonic tree. And there's many stories about this in the Keys of Enoch and the books of Enoch and in many other texts in Chaldean magic especially, where they speak about how souls actually can interbreed or get influenced or blended in many mysterious ways with the demonic forces. And now we start seeing some of the insanity that we see in this world. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for thousands and thousands of years.
It's a cycle within cycles. And going back to the Sirah, one of the observations I've noticed is that back in that right after, actually during and then immediately after the Civil War, there seemed to be an explosion of the mystery schools.
Mm-hmm.
You had Blavatsky.
That's right.
Annie
Ledbetter. Yep.
Ledbetter, all of them.
Yep.
And there was
and Freud and Jung and so many others. Yeah.
Yeah, there seemed to be some kind, and it was after that 7-year period, basically, because Blavatsky's around 1870, 75. But it seems as though that there was at least, there's estimates of somewhere between 80 and 90% of the influence on our government and the administration of our country was under the influence of the mystery schools.
Yeah, well, Masonry has always been a thread, you bet. Right. There's a lot of secret societies, some that we don't even know the names of, that are clearly there. And the problem I've found with secret societies, I've had a lot of clients involved with them. I've never gotten involved in any way. I certainly have studied and been around them from a curiosity standpoint, but I want my head in that noose. And see, that noose is when you take an oath. It's just like a religion.
Right.
I've had so many friends who are rabbis and priests and various different, pastors in very different sects of religions, including Hinduism and Taoism, etc. And one thing I've noticed that's a fairly common thing, it's not always there, but usually, and that is you have to take an oath to bind yourself to the precepts of the organization. In other words, our doctrine is it. It becomes the us and them system. It's the same thing. It's like Pink Floyd said in Us and Them. I love that song. We're literally out of the way. It's a busy day. I've got things on my mind. Where the human ego is so centric to everything that goes on, and it's the same thing we find with these organizations. It's an immersion into insanity because you have to agree that everything they espouse in their doctrines is all there is, and anything outside of that, you're wrong, right? It's like politics. So common sense is not allowed.
And then you had Aleister
It's very
Crowley,
demonic.
right? You had Crowley come along, right?
That guy, yeah.
And as a result of his mystic works and rituals and incantations, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard.
And L. Ron Hubbard. They all got together, right?
So you have a very interesting, and from my perspective, an undercurrent of information and knowledge that has been purposely managed and I guess in some ways let out.
Yeah.
And a number of the things in these mystery schools and secret societies, they tie back to the mystic arts, going again back to your point about the Egyptians and going back even further and the
Yeah.
Plato and the Greeks and Pythagoras
Oh, yeah.
and all of that.
Hermetic
Aristotle,
philosophy, all that. Yeah.
right? The metaphysics side of reality seems to be one of the most important yet hidden, subjugated, obfuscated components of reality. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, what you show in that chart, that is metaphysics. That is beyond the current model of the billiard ball grit model of colliding particles that we have in our current physics, which doesn't
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
doesn't
way
account
past
for the
physics.
ether, doesn't account for any of the
Right.
esoteric type thought and models. Hermetic principle is one of the things that those 7 hermetic principles just basically lay out reality from my perspective and experience. And those are just their fundamental metaphysics. And
Yeah.
if we look at what happened last night, I'm going to try to tie this back to this
What did happen
surreal,
last night? Yeah.
yeah, this surreal experience that the majority of people who paid any attention watched with their own eyes. I think that what we saw was something akin to a transformative disruption in the flow of the stream by those that as you and Carlin call out, are the controllers, right? The owners.
Yeah. They're
And
the owners. Yeah.
and there is an interesting question in my mind in that I had thought a couple of weeks ago that this was the potential for this to go south was very high. I don't think anybody really expected it to go that bad, even for the
Right.
people who expected it to go bad. But it seems to me almost as though it was something that was planned. It was done on purpose. The folks that are the controllers
Yeah.
knew
There's
that
there's people saying that. Yeah.
this was going to be the point. They knew it was going to be shit, so they allowed it to be shit so that they could use it to affect their ends and their means, which to me, I think is really plan B or C. I think their plan A, they didn't work out well because they're clearly not good at planning things. They're clearly not good at thinking things through and
Nope.
having some kind of logical, reasonable, sustainable, repeatable model. Everything that they put their hands on turns to shit. But they have to have some way to recoup themselves from the poor decisions that they've implemented. And I'm wondering, I think it's a serious question as to did they know they expected this to happen and this was their way out of the hole that they'd already dug themselves into?
That's a good question. The only thing I can tell you is they're not very smart because they don't have anyone to pull out of the hat here.
Yeah,
I don't know where this is going to go, because if
new
Biden
scum.
I think it's August 7th. If they don't, I think the one of the drop dead dates I was reading is either August 7th or sometime in August. The DNC, the again the Democratic Communistic Council, it has
The
to
demonic National Council.
yeah, the demonic, right? The demonic National Council of Communism has to make a decision whether or not they're, nominating Biden officially. And he doesn't seem to be backing down. I mean, I'm watching him at rallies right now, and he's out of his mind. I think he literally is going to keep going. I was amazed that.
Did you see the video of Jill helping him off the stage last night that somebody
Oh
shot?
yeah, well, Jill was patting him on the back. I was just going to say that Jill was patting him on the back um, for just answering all the questions, for getting through it. Good boy, Joe. Good boy. Here's Biscuit. I mean, I'm just wow.
Here's a treat, young man, or old man, or
Good boy. Good boy.
whatever your corpse delineation is.
Well, you got to remember, she's the babysitter. You remember that the wife of Joe Biden was killed in a car accident,
Yeah.
which is quite questionable. There's a lot of people who theorize that he had her killed and married the babysitter, which is Dr. Joe or Jill. So here we are.
It's amazing to look at the amount of credible, demonstrable evidence which is in contrary to all of the narrative, what I call the narrative. They have taken and blatantly pushed clearly inaccurate, you can't make this shit up kind of stuff, unless you're the one making it up, of course.
Yep.
And what we saw, let's go back to that. We looked at Trump's chart. What does Biden's chart look like between now and?
Looks horrible.
I mean,
It looks horrible. I
gotta
can
have
tell
some
you
aspects that are going to help him soil his shorts, I would imagine.
that's why I call him the commander in soiled briefs, because he is. And you can see it too. He's gone. He really is. I can tell you right now, Biden has K2, which is the moon's south node, the south eclipse point, right over his Saturn. And yeah, Sliden Biden he's got Saturn by transit over K2. And he's also, meaning the planet Saturn is conjuncting Joe Biden's south node, which is not good for health. It's not good for cognition either. Plus, he has transiting south node K2, aspecting his birth chart Saturn. That's a double whammy there, and not too good. I can tell you, my opinion is I don't think he's got it in him to go another year, let alone another 4.
I don't think he's
I don't see it.
I don't think he's going to make it till the end of the year.
It's not looking too good. It really isn't.
I mean, I'm just talking about his physical and mental health.
Yeah.
The speculation across how the replacement will occur. In fact, I think it was about 10 minutes into the last night. I texted a friend and I said, Operation Replacement Joe has just kicked into the next gear.
It's pretty insane, my friend. It's pretty insane. The astrology shows Biden actually might not take the pipe right away. He could make it another 2 years physically, according to that, according to the chart. But he's not well, and he's going to continue to decline by everything I can see. I mean, it every time, no matter what age you are. I mean, my young son, who's in his 20s, he had a very malefic transit, not too unlike what Biden is going through. And he said, Dad, am I going to die? He says, I really don't feel good. I said, well, Aiden, you're not going to die. But I said, you have a very difficult transit. You got an 81-year-old man here who has a situation than I see on most. I think next spring, he's going to have a really rough time. And I think if the DNC has any brains left at all, they're going to try and switch him out. And they better do it quick because, according to the laws, from what I've heard, they can't just do it. He has to concede because he's the presumptive nominee. And I think once they nominate him, the only way they can get him out is either by death or his resignation.
Well, there's
And
two things that I've heard about that. One is they can't, invoking the 25th Amendment requires both Republicans and Democrats.
well, then they're going to end up with Harris
Well,
as
and
president.
so they have
I
that
don't
as
want
an
that.
issue preventing it. But I also think that Republicans looked at last night and they said, "Nope, you picked him, you're stuck with him, keep him there." So the Republicans are not going to say, "Well, let's go ahead and process the 25th Amendment." The
Right.
second thing is at the convention, the delegates are already committed.
Yeah.
So in the
That's
according to
that's my point.
DNC
Yeah.
rules, they for them to switch out, the delegates would have to change, which apparently is not something that's in the rules for the DNC. So now you've got a situation
Right.
where the 25th Amendment should clearly be invoked, but the Republicans are going to say, "Nope, um, we're,
So,
we're sticking with your pick. So you suck it up, Buttercup. We're going forward with this," knowing that there's no way that he.
yeah. I mean, they want to shine up Gruesome and bring him in, but I don't think that's going to work. They could at the last minute. I
What
mean,
about what about Big Mike?
I don't know. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I there's one scenario I heard, which is where she apparently is clear that she doesn't want to be involved. She doesn't want to campaign.
Nah,
But if they nominate
nah,
her at the
I don't
convention,
see
if they
Michael
nominate her at
Obama
the
coming in.
convention, they've got what, a couple of months left. She makes a couple of speeches, and they're off to the races. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to me. Boy, they really didn't like that one. They really didn't like
Yep,
that
we're
little
froze
piece.
again.
Yeah, they didn't like that nugget in there about Big
Oh,
Mike.
God, I'll tell you what, buddy. I don't know what to say. I'm just trying to get rid of things here. I mean, this is crazy. I don't know what else to do here.
Because
Hang on one. So let me cast a chart here. See, I've been wanting to cast charts, but I'm afraid the computer's going to vapor lock. Okay. All right. Will they switch out? No, I don't see. Everyone's been saying X22 and all these people have been saying they're going to switch out. And Michelle Obama. I don't think Michelle Obama's got a
no.
snowball's chance in hell of running or wants to.
Or even winning.
Right, or winning.
I don't
And
see people lining up for that shit show. Um, I think they're just going to capitulate, and they're going to try through the minions and the career bureaucrats in all of the siloed states of the deep, that they are going to just try to produce as much fuckery between the time that they lose and the time that Trump takes over. And even after that, because it's going to take Trump a while to clean out more of the clogs and the turds that are in the swamp. But it seems to me, at least my spidey sense says, there's going to be everybody's talking about the great reset, the great reveal, I call it the great rethink, and the great rework. But there is going to be a great cleansing, in my opinion, and it's going to take a good year. But I think that it'll result in a shitload of people being exposed, and a lot of the precedents that the idiots that are running the show now have implemented will come back and bite them in the ass hard.
yeah, well, they've been saying that for a long time, at least ever since 2020. And, there's many people out there who says, this military tribunal takeover and all that. I mean, I wish it would happen, but so far it hasn't. I do see change here. I see something is going to shift. Biden is being his old self. He's arrogant, he's cocky, and he's stubborn. And this is exactly what the chart shows. I don't think he's going to sink. Actually had Trump winning by 67% of that debate. Now that's stunning. Either CNN's trying to get the ratings back up, or they're being truthful for a change, which is astoundingly shocking.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
to
like,
that
whoa.
point, and to that point, I got to give Tapper and Bash credit last night. I thought that that was actually one of the best moderated presidential debates I've ever seen.
Yeah, they stayed center.
They stayed center. They stayed on point. They brought back, and it was interesting that, you know, when you have just 2 minutes and then a minute and then a minute and a minute, that's hard to manage. I thought that they did a pretty damn good job on that, and
Yeah,
came
no,
back
they did a
several
good job.
times, said, "Hey, the question was this: you've got 40 seconds left," and they didn't, you know, interject their own bias and nonsense. So
That's right.
I got to
No,
give
I,
those
I gotta,
two
you know, they were
kudos.
biased in the questions.
Yeah,
Um,
of
you know,
course.
they kept focusing on January 6th. They kept focusing, and I thought Trump's comeback was actually quite elegant, where he said, "Listen, uh, here I'll say
Yeah,
that again."
I think what you're saying about Trump's comeback on January 6th was just masterful, because he
It
said
was.
on January 6th we had lowest inflation. On January 6th there were no wars. On January 6th we had an economy that was thriving, and it just left him speechless.
Yeah, and the
Which
fact
was
that he also came back with, "Listen, I tried to get the National Guard. Pelosi rejected it, and other people rejected it." And he didn't go into the fact. See, what got Tucker Carlson removed from Fox News is because he told the truth. He was actually showing how the tapes were buried and hidden, and that there was contrary evidence on the tapes that showed these. And Trump did mention that they were leading people in
Yeah,
and heading them in. And he didn't get into the fact that there was a lot of FBI and CIA undercover agents leading people in there.
in the
This
group.
was coerced to happen. Yeah,
Right.
it was coerced to happen. There's no question about that. The Supreme Court actually today ruled in favor of one of the January 6
Right.
people, and it's
Hmm.
now been moved to another court. So yeah, we're in virtual insanity. We really are. You know, to that note, when you look at the bigger picture and you take this up to 100,000 feet, this shows you just how powerful the, a lot of people call it the deep state. I would call it the secret governing bodies of this country and the world. And it is the Western banking system combined with, I think, a very black ops military. I've heard the United States has perfected fission, which is different than fusion.
Hmm.
Fission is low level nuclear power,
Hmm.
which they can now put and run jet engines with, they can run propulsion systems with, and most importantly, it's little, it's small. They can keep a plane or an unmanned craft or a watercraft running until the rivets fall out. I mean, the life on this is 20 to 50 years, I'm hearing. So they don't need to refuel. But the biggest thing is, and we hear all this scare tactics. Well, Putin's got hypersonic missiles. Okay, try a hypersonic missile is just a multiple, derivative of the speed of sound. Now you ain't going to beat a laser. Light is 186,000 miles per second. That will zap anything out of the sky in a nanosecond.
Hmm.
And they have lasers, particle beam, and directed energy weapons, which is a fancy term for God only knows what they really have, on satellites. They've got them on planes now. They've got them on unmanned craft. They have them on our aircraft carriers. They claim to even have them on the submarines that can surface and do things. So this whole game, Petraeus let it out of the bag really well. He said, well, if Newton, if I can talk, he said, if Putin releases a tactical nuke, so we'll just take out his whole fleet. And I don't think they're kidding. I think they can.
Hmm.
And this really shows just how far advanced this secret government is that's running this place. Because it sure as hell isn't Washington. And you see the money that's being shoveled out. They don't care. They don't care. They want to go digital currency. This is just numbers on a computer screen.
And
And
that's essentially what our current system actually is
it
anyway.
is
I go
exactly,
on a number of shows that I'm on. We get into this whole AI thing and
exactly right.
tokenization, blockchain, which is the only reason that cryptos exist, is because of the digitized, secure model of data structure known as blockchain.
Yeah, that's
Um,
it.
all of that is going to have a significant impact in the future going forward, and it's going to transform, to me, literally everything, all the way from, the way that governments are administered and the administration of countries. I think those borders and those delineations are going to become very fluid and potentially change dramatically once the liberation of the individual with the sovereignty and provenance of their own identity, their own assets, is made available to the individual to control. Right now, all
Oh,
of the
to the
systems,
government to control. Right, right.
yeah, it'll be totally
Yep.
disintermediated and decentralized away from
Oh,
these organized administrative systems, which have been shown to be not only broken, but they're corrupt. And they're a lot of the
totally.
broken stuff is because they're corrupt, because there's no transparency, there's no accountability. This whole
Mm.
election system stuff is just mind-boggling to me because it's actually designed to not be transparent and accountable. You can't go in and validate anything that happens because it's been set up so that you can't do that.
All digitized. Those voting machines completely can be controlled.
Oh yeah.
And unless they get rid of digital voting machines, and there's all these checks and balances. Oh, you can't access the internet. They're totally accessing networks and internets. And again, anybody who thinks that you're going to get free and balanced elections without paper ballots, not going to happen.
Not going to
Not
happen.
going to happen.
And why is it all these other countries are able to do their elections in one day, count the ballots in one day? Because they don't use machines. You have to bring the ballot in. It has to
Yeah.
have your signature, etc.
Unless that happens. Look at the illegal aliens. They're getting not only are they getting a check, free health care and everything else, but they're literally saying, don't forget to vote for Joe Biden.
And
You
that
see,
was one of the things that Trump called out last night about when Sloppy Joe stumbled over we killed Medicare and just kind of froze for a second. And
yeah, you
Biden
vapor
looked
lunch.
at him and said, well, yeah, you absolutely did that with all these illegals that are coming in, and you're giving them Medicare and Medicaid and all of this stuff. And you are going to break the Social Security system because of what you're doing. Because I think it's worth repeating.
Yeah.
When Sloppy Joe dropped that thing about killing Medicare right at the end there, and he just kind of stopped.
Yep.
He had that vapor lock. And Trump looked at him and said, well, yeah, you certainly have, with bringing in all the illegal aliens and putting them on Social Security. You are going to kill Social
Oh,
Security.
yeah.
And it was like, well, how can you argue
And Medicare and everything else. Yeah.
all of that? It just makes total sense.
Mhm.
Let's in the last few minutes here, let's toss around this whole, who do you think will be running with Trump?
That I don't know. I haven't looked into that, and I don't know. I can tell you, I'm worried about Trump's safety. And what I showed you earlier is the Uranus squaring Mars, sustained right at the end of July into, I think this is an extremely dangerous time for this country and the world, because Uranus now has entered into that sidereal sign of the Pleiades, which is also known as Taurus, and it's sweeping across the Seven Sisters. The Seven Sisters of Hades are within the first 6 or 7 degrees of sidereal Taurus. All kinds of things can happen here that are very dangerous. You've got Mars, the planet of war, sweeping over Uranus, starting right about, it's going to get an orb of influence about the 10th of July.
Mhm.
And it's going to really all be in play up until the 20th, because Mars sweeps across Uranus, which is sudden, unexpected events and violence. Secondly, it conjuncts Kappa Algol, the most evil star in the sky. And then Uranus, which is much slower, comes along and hits Kappa Algol. Now, all this is happening, meanwhile, back at the ranch. So the United States, being 248 years old, has primary directed Saturn conjoining the U.S. Mars. Now, you might say, okay, great. So what does that mean? Well, Mars and Saturn, if you got a definition of trouble and war, that is it. And I think the owners know this stuff. Personally, I think we're not just dealing with bankers. I think we have a lot of demonic forces and evil extraterrestrial intermixing here. And we also have divinity. And remember, God and creation seems to be above it all, or nothing would be here.
Right.
And I can tell you, my opinion is we're going to see Hell Come to Breakfast this summer. I really do. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope we're talking here in October and it didn't happen, or better yet, next year, and we're all heading in a much better direction. But I can tell you, I would surmise, based on everything I see in the astrology, we are in for a very dangerous time coming up here. And again, the psychics, the remote viewers, the Cliff Highs, all these people.
The divination tools and techniques are all aflutter looking at the energies.
Yeah, they are all flooded, and everyone's seeing something different. And yeah. I'm gonna say between now and I'd say the end of this year, hell's coming to breakfast. The reason why, if we look at the past, if it's any indication of what these energies represent, I can tell you it's intense. And I think July, August, and September, we're going to see some crazy stuff. Why? I had mentioned when it was cutting out, primary directed Saturn on the United States birth chart is conjuncting Mars. That's an aspect of war. That's an aspect of violence. That's an aspect of attacks, etc. So I hope I'm wrong, but everything between now and the bell starts ringing here right in the first part of July, which is right around the corner. The intensity happens, but the confluence that I'm seeing here with, again, the sidereal Uranus, the Mars conjuncting this intense fixed star between the first part of July and the 20th. And then you've got the second Pluto return in the United States. That's usually where the action happens. See, things come in threes. You have initiation, transformation, and the integration and result. We're in the hit, the second one this summer. And I can tell you the owners are going to pull something off. And this could come from any angle. So it could come from a foreign attack. It could come from an internal attack. Or they just, create another situation where everybody starts rioting.
Well, for the malefic transits and so forth in Trump's chart going forward, that's why I think it's interesting to consider who is going to be running with him, because if indeed there's something that happens to him, that second person that's in place would be in charge is going to be more important now. It's not going to be like the Pence run this time. It seems to me that the import of that second person is going to be...
I could cast a chart on this, but the computer is so hacked up. But I don't think Trump's made a decision yet, from what I can see.
It seems, I don't know. I got to tell you, when people like Vivek and J.D. Vance speak, I find them highly compelling in their thought process, the words that they use, and the way they deliver. Vivek is, he's like a Trump Jr. on steroids from the standpoint of his ability to attack and to slay, just with his mind and his words.
It's bad.
I think we're being listened to, and they're going, we can't let these guys drop all these nuggets.
Yeah, exactly. Something's going on.
Saki